All right, hi. My name is Wendy Alm and I am the owner of Go to Art Camp, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Sugar Skull kits. So without any further ado, I want to make sure first that you have everything you need. You should have received one of these great little kits. I have my ribbon off already. You're going to need 2 glasses of water. One will do, but I like to have 2. And then you're also going to need some paper towels. So nothing has to be fancy. If you don't have paper towels, I'm going to move this closer here. If you don't have any paper towels, an old t-shirt or some kind of a cloth that you have around or a dish towel will work just fine, and then you can throw it in the washer. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is pull it out, and it may be a little hard to get out. You can kind of shake everything that you can get and then pull that and all of your other parts. And I'm going to go over everything. Don't get rid of this yet. You may use this as a palette, so I'll show you how to do that. All right, normally I do acrylic art kits, and you would have gotten that, except for we had a freak snowstorm where we had a foot of snow and really cold, like in the teens and lower single-digit temperatures here, and acrylic paint freezes and does not return back to normal. So we made you watercolor kits. These are professional grade watercolors. They're for the most part, except for one color, they're Winsor and Newton, and you have a variety of colors. I'm going to go through these here in a minute, but I'm going to show you how to use them. You also have instructions which are for acrylic. So this is going to be different than what we're going to do today, because on this one I have you start really soon with black. You do not do that with watercolor. You start with your light colors. You're going to bring your dark colors and your blacks in later, or else you'll create mud. So make sure that you pay attention to that, but it gives you a nice reference for something if you want to color it like that. This is an acrylic mixing card, like I have with my normal acrylic kits, but I do think it has some fun little ideas, like you can add bling later on this if you have little sticky diamond things. You can do a lot of fun stuff, or glitter onto your piece. So I just wanted you to have this. You can read through it. It's a lot of fun. All right. Inside, so on the outside you had a watercolor board, and you have a little wooden easel that you can display it on. So when you're done, you can just put your little thing and sit it on the shelf somewhere. Okay, this is a bigger piece. You can frame it. It's 5x7, standard frame size, and I'm going to show you just some ideas on how you might want to paint that as well. And then I threw in some extra little pieces of paper, and you probably have a smaller piece of board than this, but another little scrap of watercolor board. So the first thing I want you to do before you do anything, you're probably not going to use these, but if you want to use them for something, they're great for dots. Q-tips are great for dots, and you can usually scratch lines into things with things like toothpicks. So just set those aside for right now. When you first get these brushes, they have a starch to keep their point. So before you do anything, they're going to be hard. I want you to take them in the water and just squish them around. Just make sure it's nice and you get all of that stuff out, and then you can just dab it on the paper towel. So all 3 of your brushes, I want you to get all of that stuff out of the brush. All brushes come like that, and again, it helps them keep their point, and you just wash that out, just like that. Okay, put these over here so you can see on both cameras. All right, now on one of your scraps of paper, or on the scrap board that I gave you, I think the first thing that you might want to do is get familiar with your colors. And I want you to also realize that you do not need a lot of color to paint with these. So I get my brush a little wet. If it's dripping wet, I just dab it on a paper towel. So just dab it a little bit. And you want to activate these colors. So I'm just going to start with the yellow because it's my lightest color. This is Cadmium Yellow Pale. And I'm just going to swatch it so I can see what it looks like. So you can also add a little water. And then if you clean your brush, I'm going to show you something else you can do too. If you wet an area, this is going to help in your paint later. And then take and get some water, some paint on there. So I just got this nice and wet, and add that in. It'll just travel in your water. And you can also do like some thin washes. You can even dab it a little if you want. Spread it out. So there's a lot that you can do with these. Anyway, so I would highly recommend that you go through each of these. I'm going to go through them quickly with you, just so you know what colors you have. This is cadmium orange. I'll show you thinned out. It goes like that. If you add more paint on there, it'll get nice and thick and rich. You can also layer. So you can do, I don't know if you can see that or not, but you can put a little bit of a wash and then start building up layers as it dries, okay? The next color in the corner is alizarin crimson. Fun fact, I named my daughter alizarin. Her middle name's Crimson. So this one is alizarin crimson. It's a red that's a little on the pink side, but take a look at this. If you take that and then clean your brush in between colors. I don't know if you noticed that, but I clean my brush. It'll keep your colors from getting muddy. That alizarin crimson makes a beautiful mix. It also, here I'll mix it in with some of the yellow. So that's what it looks like there. The one below the alizarin crimson is Rose Madder. This is going to be a pink color. So I thought you might like having a pink. And I wet my brush and then I wet these to activate them. If you want it a little thicker, wet it again, rub it around with the brush, and then you can paint. You can also use your lid to mix colors. So you can put some color in your lid like this. Wash your brush, and then maybe I want like a bright yellow green. I grab a bunch of yellow with a clean brush, and then I mix it in that lid, and look at that. It makes like this beautiful, beautiful yellow-green color. Hopefully I have both cameras working and I'll be able to merge them tonight for you. The green in the middle, most of you should have a green in the middle of your palette. That is called Viridian. It is a really crazy, obnoxious color on its own, but mixed with yellow or blue. If you mix it with the blue that's in the corner, down in this corner underneath the pink, it makes the most beautiful turquoise color. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. Take some of that, take some of this blue, and mix them together. And the more green you put in, the more the turquoise is going to be on the green side. But it will give you some beautiful turquoise colors. Versus the bottom, underneath the rose, is going to be a bright blue. In the middle, on the bottom, is what's called Prussian blue. And Prussian blue is turquoisey in that it has a touch of green, but it'll give you a really nice dark color. It also, both of the blues will mix beautifully with either of your reds. The very bottom left corner, you have black. Again, use your black last, and your dark blues even. And in the middle, this is a neat color. It can look gold or it can look brown. So it's going to give you a yellow that is more of a golden yellow color. It too is beautiful when you mix it with greens. So I'll mix them over here. So play around with your colors and try mixing up different colors, see what you like, get to know them. They're just way fun to play with and try different things. Here, I'll mix like a yellow orange. And there's a real pretty yellow orange. So I gave you that so that you can try mixing some different colors and seeing what your palette does. Okay? All right, so once you've done all that and gotten to know your colors, there's a couple things that you can do with this. If you want it to look like this piece, I'm going to paint it to look like this. But I also want you to know that you can do something very simple. This piece right here, I only used blue. So I took a big brush, took one of my bigger brushes, and got a lot of water, and I did a bunch of water over this, and then I entered a bunch of blue in there, just a little. I spread it all around. I wiped it with the paper towel, and then I started going in with the tiny brush and adding in darker blues so that there was shadow. So it's a really fun way to do it, and we'll do one of those in a little bit with a different color. For now, what I'm going to have you do, there's two ways you can do this. You can either wet your brush and paint the background with the brush and the wet paint, or you can carefully, I'm going to go around the skull and only do the background. So I'm going to do this half and half. This side, I'm going to wet first. So I'm going to wet it. And then, I had 2 glasses of water, and then I started using my dirty water for clean water. So after you wash your brush in the dirty water, before you dip it in the paint, use your clean water. Unless you're teaching on a class and you forget. So the water just kind of absorbs into the paper and helps the flow. I think it just makes a really nice addition on here. Now on this side, I did not add the water. I'm just going to add the paint. Very close. And I'm going to try to paint this fast. You take your time on your painting. Do not rush through this. Just enjoy it. Have fun. This is supposed to be a sugar skull, a celebration of life, and just a really fun thing for you all to do. So again, I'm just a couple notes on your brushes. The one with the maroon handle is a very floppy brush, but it moves paint around nice. If you want a little more control, especially if you're new to watercolor, use the other two. They're more of an acrylic brush, but they will give you great control with watercolor because they're firm. They come to a nice point. Both of them are a nice edge, and so you might feel a lot more comfortable with the yellow handle brushes. So just a little note about that. Now this has fire in it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the red in the top corner, not the pink one, but the red one. And now I'm going to go in and get that red color. So get my brush wet, get that red color wet, and I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to bring it onto the yellow. Now, I'm going to wet my brush as I go further down and kind of blend it in so that it's not as red in the middle. It starts to turn orange. Then I'll even clean my brush a few more times and blend it more. So once again, I start at the top with that red, paint it right on top here. I'm going to go over this edge too behind the skull. That, get a little clean water. Now I'm going to start to wet it and pull it down below that top part into the middle. Wet my brush, clean it in the dirty water, then get clean water, and I go down to this area, and I'm just wetting it. And what that does is it lets that bleed down in. If you want it even redder, do another layer. So go back on there. Start at the top again. I'm going to do dirty water, clean water, bring it down, dirty water, clean water, bring it down. Get a little more paint. I'm coming around the top. And you don't have to paint these this way. This is your sugar skull, so you can do whatever you want. Here, I got a little brush here. All right, so there's your start with your sugar skull. This needs to dry. So while this dries, there's some tricks. If you have a hairdryer at the house, I brought one in, you can speed up the drying process. So I just wanted you to know it's fine to use a hairdryer. So I'm going to hold this up so you can see it, although my light is really bright. And hopefully you can see it on here. Now while this is drying, and we're going to come back to that, I'm going to show you kind of a trick for what you can do with this one. Okay, we're going to do something like this. Now I'm just going to get my big flat brush. So it's a yellow handle, but it's almost like a rectangle on the end. And I get some clean water, and I'm just going to throw some water on this. So back and forth. You can even take your fingers and rub it around a little bit. I just want a nice wet background. And on this one, I think I'm going to do it in pink. So I'm going to go to that pink, that rose madder color. I'm going to start at the edge in case it gets too dark. And I'm just going to throw the water on there. Okay. Get some more. And I'm just doing some streaks. So I just have some streaky stuff going on. Just real fun until you feel comfortable. Don't worry about your edges. You can go all the way down there. You can add some water like this. You can take a paper towel and wipe it a little if you want. I want a little more color on mine, so I'm going to get some water and some paint again, and I'm going to go back in and do a few more little streaks. I don't want that much on the chin, so I'm just going to go out like that again. Okay, and like the other one, this one has to dry now, so we're going to let that dry. Now I'm going to come back to the skull. I'm going to let this, we're just going to flip back and forth for these in order to just teach you what to do, or just some little tricks with watercolors. So, all right. Now, like I said, your yellow handled round comes to a little point. It's a number 2 round. It says it on the side of it. It has a teeny tiny little point. And I'm going to, like on the card, add a little green in his face, in those little face things. So I want it a little thicker. Make sure you don't have too much water on it. And I'm just going to paint inside those little things. Now, if you were to mess that all up, let's see how this works. I actually just dabbed it. It still left some in. You could get some water and probably pull some of that out, but just go very slow if you don't like it, or if you want less color on there, quickly down and up, and just dab it. That helped pull a little bit color off, which I kind of like how it looks when it does that. So I'm just going to paint these real quick. And then I'm going to do the same thing down and up. And I'm not sure what you can see with that bright light. There you go. Okay. Same thing. So I've got a bright yellow top for the flower on this one. I'm just going to paint some yellow in that circle. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush, get it clean, and then I think I'm going to use, I'm not going to use pink, I'm just going to use red for the flower petals, and I'm just going to go ahead and use that red, which is alizarin crimson. So I'm just going to paint those in. If you want to try something different for these little blue marks I have on his head, fill it in with water. This one I'll do with water and the other one I'll paint straight. So that one I filled in with water, then I go down to the blue on the bottom corner and I'm just dabbing it in there and let it travel a little bit. You have to push it a little bit around. The other side I'll just get some blue. The loose water puddles are a little more hard to control. Like they're kind of wild and crazy, but it'll often pull into, oops, like a darker area and go light to dark. So it gives you some nice effects if you do it that way. Okay. Now, I think that these flowers are dry enough, so I'm just going to take some green and I'm going to paint the petals on the flowers. So there's the petal. I'll do the other one. And there's that. And again, in between colors, I'm cleaning in my dirty water and then go to your clean water to get clean water on that. Now on this one, I have yellow and red alternating all around his eyes. So I'm just going to cheat it. This is an easy cheat. And I'm going to go around, and don't worry about getting in like the middle because we're going to cover that with black. So I'm not too worried about it. If I go over a little bit, I'm just going to right now put yellow on every one, and then we'll put red on top because the darker will cover. Sometimes it'll mix, so it might look a little orangey, but that's okay on this one because it'll work with the background. So I'm just painting the edges around his eyes. Okay, and while we're waiting for that to dry, we'll go back to this one here in a second. I'm going to paint blue in these little corner pieces. So be patient with yourself. The other thing too is if you want to do part watercolor and after it dries, make sure it is dry. You can use Sharpie markers, you could use ink pen, you could use regular markers, and you could color this with markers or even color a pencil. Like a mixed media piece, it's going to give you a little more control. So whatever you've got around the house, if you have any other drawings, utensils, tools, feel free to use them because you can do some fun stuff with them. Okay? I'm going to take red, get a little on the tip of this, and just do little red dots beside the leaves on those little filigrees. There's 2 little dots. So I'm just doing 2 little dots. Okay? And then we're going to go back to this one. So if you notice on this one, all I did after I did that was I used the same color. I'm using pink in this example. This one I used the blue. And I just go back in and I start coloring. You can do a little bit at a time. You can say, okay, I'm going to do it this dark this time, and then the next time put another layer on and make it even darker. So it doesn't have to be perfect the first time around. You can kind of see what you like. And just play with it. So like on this, I'm doing the corners. And I might go down here and mess with the leaves. Okay, come back to this one. Okay, we're going to go back to the other one. I'll show you where we are on this one. So give you an idea of what's going on. And then here, we're going to start messing with a little bit of the black paint. So the black is in the bottom corner. I'm going to thin it out a little bit. And I'm not on this one, I'm not even going to mess with my teeth. If you want to put a little shade, or here, I'll do something funny. I'll give them a missing tooth. We'll just color one of these in. Feel free to do that. When you are done, I would encourage you, instead of using the brush to outline it, go ahead and get a black ink pen. Get a thin black Sharpie, if you have one of those around the house, and outline it with that, because it's going to be an easier line for you to draw. Same with coloring this in. If you have a small black Sharpie and you feel more comfortable, paint it in with a Sharpie, because a brush is going to be a lot harder than a Sharpie. So I'm just painting his nose right now. We're not going to do his eyes yet because I got to get the red on there first. If I don't, the black could ruin the red. So we're going to go back to red. And now I'm just going to go into every other little petal. Now if you end up with two that are the same, like here, just go with it. It's no big deal. A note, if you don't have a kit but you're following along with the template, you can use anything. You could use markers, crayons. If you have crayons, you can color it in with crayons. The point is just have a really good time. I want you to have fun with it and just color and move some paint around. Just enjoy it. See what you can do. Okay? We're going to wait for that. I have a big blob right there to dry a little bit. And I'm going to mess with this one for you. Just a little bit. Go back to the pink. Make a nice thick paste with that pink. And again, all I'm doing is highlighting some colors, or adding some color onto here. So all I'm doing is, you're just coloring, it's just with watercolors. And again, you could have left it just like this. You could have used an ink pen or a Sharpie, colored in the dark areas of the eyes if you want. Something that might be really neat we'll try is doing a little purple inside the eyes. So when we get to that inside part, let's try a little purple inside of there. I'm going to go ahead and do some of these. Oh, here's an idea. We'll go every other one Should have started that earlier. Your paint will go a long way. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm using hardly any paint. Add a little bit of color in here. Again, you can use a lid, spread it around a little bit. You can be wild and crazy. Add a bunch of color inside the teeth if you want. Here, I'll do a bunch of color in the teeth. Even wet that brush again. Dab it near the gums. We'll see if it travels. So I just added it in there. It's traveling a little bit. Alright. Now this one still has a little red. I'm going to dab that. And we're going to go in here. And we're going to paint this. Inside his eyeball. When it starts to get hard to move that paint around, just get the tip of your brush in the water, twirl it around in your color again, and that should fix it. But it should not be difficult to move around. It shouldn't be so loose when you're doing something this detailed. If you have it too loose, you're going to have a hard time controlling it. But if it starts to get really tight, dip a little tip in the water, roll it in your paint, and then start painting again. Okay. We're going to go back to this again. And this time I'm going to add this, take this pink and put some in the top of this. And now I'm going to add some blue and make like a purple color. With the rose madder and the blue. That looks nice. So it makes a real pretty, if you use that pink rose madder and mix it with the blue, that makes a really pretty purple. So like if you'll notice on this one, I just used blue for the insides of his mouth or his nose and his eye sockets. This one I made like a deep purple. And that was just with the blue and the pink mixed together, and I used the lid. Okay. One more last little note. You can decorate around this if you want. So here's where we are with this one. Now a couple things. If you want to outline it, again, use a pen or a Sharpie, a thin point Sharpie to outline it. That would look something like, let me find something with a decent tip. Maybe this one. So you can go around all these lines if you want. Or just leave them like they are. That's up to you. but it gives you something else you can do. It gives you a bolder look. Now, something I haven't tried that I was thinking about with you guys was I was thinking about these little easels, and I thought, I bet we can color them with the watercolor. Sure enough, so it's gonna stain it, which is really neat. I used my flat brush, I got it wet, and I'm just painting the easel with the watercolor. You could do all kinds of things with this. You could mix the colors. Here, I'll mix red on this side, like fire. Do some neat things like that. I'm just going to do part of this so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But it's real pretty. And then once it's all done, then your sugar skull goes right on your little easel. So super pretty, super cool with the watercolor paints painting the easel. That's kind of a fun thing. I cheated, I didn't paint all my sides yet, but I want to make sure that you guys have plenty of fun time to paint, and I'm just trying to give you a basic idea of what to do. Now, if you want to draw on this piece, you can even add stuff to it. So you could add, here's some little filigrees. You could add bigger stuff like this. You could add even more paisley things if you wanted something like that. And then you could paint them if it's a permanent marker. You could draw in pencil, then you could paint it. If you want to draw a marigold, here's a little trick. This is kind of fun. I start with a little squiggly circle, and then I draw petals around it. One layer of petals. Then I start in the middle of each petal, and it's like a letter U shape. Middle petal to middle petal. And you alternate that. Do a little one. Petals get a little bigger as you go further out. And you just keep going. So I'm going to show you real quick. There is, I don't know if you can see that, but just a fun little thing. You could fill this whole bottom corner up with marigolds, and then after that dries, just add orange on top, yellow and orange. Just watery mix of yellow and orange. Or you could do it the opposite way. You could take a whole bunch of yellow and orange, and you can just loosely paint all over your border like that. So you got a variation of colors and fun stuff. And then once it's dry, go in and draw your marigold shapes all over the top of that. That would be really fun to see. So I think this is giving you a pretty good feel for what you can do. You don't have to do any one thing any one way. You don't even have to paint this sugar skull this way. Here's one where I just tried mixing a whole bunch of colors and made a mess. It's just a total mess, but it still looks decent. It looks pretty good from there. So I hope that you have a great time painting. Just have fun and enjoy it, and thank you all. Bye.